Hi, this is Kevin with Map Practical. So today we're just going to get into Lab 1 for the Intro GIS course. All right, this is just a test, but so basically here's this computer, and I want you guys to, if you're working from home, to create a folder for this class inside your documents. But if you're working on campus or you're remoting into the campus computers, then hopefully you will have mapped the network drive, and then you'll have the classes folder here, and then inside of Intro GIS you'll see there are two different folders. There's the master labs and then the students folder. So every week, if you're going to be mapping the drive, you would go inside the master labs, right click on the new folder for the new lab, copy it, navigate back up and out to students, and then find your net ID. I've got one for me in here. So where am I? There I am. And inside of there, I want you to make two folders, right? So new folder. This is going to be your lectures. And this other folder is going to be for your labs. And this is where you will work all the time. If you're here live on campus or you're remoting in, this is labs, right? And then I'll go inside my labs folder, right click, and paste that Intro GIS. And inside of there will be all the data and the instructions for the lab. And that's where you should work with all your data, save your maps, save your ArcMap documents, everything. But if you're working from home, then you're going to be in your documents, and I want you to create an Intro GIS folder. Inside of there, I want you to create a lectures folder where you can download all the lectures. And inside the labs, I want you to create an Intro GIS Lab 1 folder. And right now it's empty. I don't have anything in it. So if I pop over to Moodle, then you can see everything you need for every week's lab will be posted on Moodle. So I'm going to download this zip file. And I'm going to save that. It just popped up on another screen. I'm going to save that into my documents, Intro GIS, Labs, Lab 1. Save it. There we go. And I'm also going to grab the lab instructions. And I can just download those just like this right into the same folder. Save it. And I'll have to go back and download this report template, which is a Word document that shows how I want you to do all of your reports. There you go. So that's all downloaded. So we're done now on Moodle, and now we can take a look back in that folder again. You can always click on one of these guys and say show in the folder, and then I'll bring that over. So here we are. So here's what we downloaded, the instructions, the report template, and then here's our data. So the data is zipped because you can see a little zipper on it, right? That means that it's been compressed, so it's easier to serve up online. So what I want to do is right click on it, and hopefully you have 7-zip or pzip or something like that installed on your computer to unpack these zipped files. And I would go to extract to, and then in quotations it'll put a folder name. So that would extract it to a folder called Lab 1 Data. And that's the easiest way to do it. If you don't have 7-zip or something, Windows now has the ability just to extract all, but there's one little quirk. So if I hit extract all, I'll pull this over so you can see it. It creates a folder for it, but it doubles up. So you would end up with a Lab 1 Data folder and then another folder inside of it called Lab 1 Data. And that just makes things confusing in GIS. So I just get rid of that name and it'll go ahead and extract it out. We'll let it rip. And there you go. So it just opened it. We're already inside of here. So here's the Lab 1 Data folder created, and we look in there and see all the shape files and all the other files that they need that we'll talk about in lecture, okay? All right, so now you're all set up. So you open the instructions and just get right to work. So the instructions, and I can close all this out, will tell you to go to your Windows program right here and to find either ArcCatalog, and I've already made a permanent link to it, or you can go in the GIS, ArcGIS folder here, and then click on or double click on ArcCatalog, and you could also search for it underneath the search here, and you just start to type in Arc and the different programs will show up. So there's ArcGIS. Now I'm using 10.8, you guys are using 10.7, doesn't matter, all the instructions will be the same. And we'll open up ArcCatalog. Waiting for it. All right, it popped up on my other screen, but here it is. And let me get my instructions, make sure I've got everything going. Okay, so this is the ArcCatalog environment. ArcCatalog is just one of the different pieces of software that Esri provided for you for this semester. ArcMap is where we'll make our maps. In ArcCatalog is where we'll look at our data. Okay, so folder connections, I already have one to a workspace, but we need to make a new one. It's got all the usual suspects here. You've got a file, right? New, connect to folder, edit, view, all these different things. So to connect to the folder, you can go to File, Connect to the folder, or there's a button, and when you hover over it, the name comes up. There's multiple ways to do most things inside of ArcGIS software. So we'll say Connect to folder, and then I'm going to go to this PC and my documents, and then my Intro GIS class is right here that I created, and then labs. Now I don't want to drill down and just go to lab 1, because then next week when I make a new folder for lab 2, I won't be able to see it inside of ArcCatalog. So I'm going to stay at an upper level here called labs, say OK, and then it created it. And if I hit the little plus symbol next to it, see, I can see my folder for lab 1, and I can see the data inside of there. And if I click on it, it'll show all the data. Okay, all right. So now, once you've got all this data inside of ArcCatalog, we're going to do some previewing. So we're just going to click on this county poly. That means it's a polygon shape file. We will start to work with geodatabases later, but this week we'll just be working with shape files. They have little symbols, and it kind of tells you what it is. So the little dots on the symbol show that it's a point shape file. The polygon shows it's a polygon, and then the line work shows that it's a line file, a polyline file. So we click on county poly there. The contents just gives you a little thumbnail, and if you click on the preview tab, what do you see? Well, you see a map of the counties of Montana, right? It's fairly basic. It's not too complex. You can zoom into it, so there are some tools up here. There's a zoom tool. You could, draw a zoom box around Missoula. If you were to click the little globe here, full extent, it'll take it back out to the entire extent of Montana. You could also use the pan tool to pan around. So if you were zoomed in, and your scroll wheel also zooms in, and then you could pan around or go back out to full size. Okay? Down here at the bottom, and actually I'm going to get rid of my pan tool, but down here at the bottom under preview, we're looking at the geography right now. But if we were to take a look at the table, this is the attribute table. So each one of those counties has a row, all right? And that row represents all of the data for, say, Lincoln County. So it's got its shape, length, and its area. These are auto-generated. Those numbers don't mean much to us in the real world. Here's a name abbreviation. Here's the square miles, its FIPS code, and its acres for that particular county. Okay? All right. So how many records do we have in here? Well, it turns out that we've got 57 rows, and that's always delineated down here inside of an Arc attribute table. How many counties are there in Montana? Well, if you don't know that, then you got to jump on the internet, go to Google, and just type in a simple, question: how many counties are there in Montana? And you might find this is off by 1, and that's one of the questions in the lab. Why? Well, you can take a look through all these, and you might realize that one of these is not necessarily a county, but it does represent a piece of a polygon that is inside the state, right? So always double check what you're finding in these attribute tables. They were created by somebody, and they could be off. It's the same with those area calculations. I like to recalculate mine, and we'll do that a lot this semester. All right, so if we go back to our table here, and then there's table options down here on the corner, and we're going to go to this find tool. So here's the find tool. And in the lab, I ask you to type in mineral. So if we type in mineral and hit find, it found it right there. Put a little arrow next to it, and that's Mineral County right there. And so that's an easy way for you to find inside of an attribute here. And then you could go over and figure out how many acres it is, right? The thing inside of ArcCatalog is you can't right-click and copy it. When we're in ArcMap and we're looking in attribute tables, you can copy things out of it. So you'll just have to take a note to answer the question in the lab today. All right. So I ask in the lab, how many square miles? How many acres? But I also ask how many hectares? Well, obviously GIS could help us find the hectares. We could calculate hectares, but that's a little bit above this first intro lab. So just use Google to Google that stuff, right? So just do a conversion from one of the values that you already have of either square miles or acres to get your hectares. All right, cool. So there's a lot of different things you can do in ArcCatalog. You can search for tools. There are some tools that you can actually run and work with. You can query your data using like the identify tool the same way that we will in in ArcMap. So once you're back in the geography, you can use the identify tool and click on a county, and it'll tell you what county it is, Missoula County, so on and so forth. You can take a look and play around in here. There's Arc Toolbox, and that'll open up and show you all the possible tools that you can work with inside of ArcGIS. It's quite a few. See, here they all are, and we'll get into many of these over the course of the semester. I like to just dock things. You can just hover over and dock them on the side, and then you can pin them to the side so they're not in your way, and you can see things. All right? Okay. So from within inside of ArcCatalog, you can also open a new ArcMap document. So if we go up here and hover over, you'll see ArcMap, and we'll double click on that, or single click, seems to work, and it'll slowly start to open a brand new ArcMap document. It opened on my other screen, but what it would start with is one of these ArcMap getting started, right? So we always want to start our new labs with a My Template and a blank, right? And then this default geodatabase, that's just the one that's created on the computer every time you start ArcMap. We're going to leave that for now, but later in the future we will change that to the geodatabase that we create. We're going to hit OK, and then boom, it starts up a blank ArcMap document. And there you go. We always want to start with a blank ArcMap for now in this intro class. All right. So it's got all the usual suspects as well. So you got a menu bar up here, right? And under File, there's Save, Save As, Print, all these different things. Export, we'll use that a lot this semester to export our maps. Edit, View, Bookmark, so on and so forth. Like I said before, there's multiple ways to do things. You can add data by this Add Data button here, or you can go File, Add Data, and then choose the same thing there. And when it does come in, it's going to put it right here in the layers. This is the table of contents, and this is the display pane. So let's add some data. We'll go here, and we're going to look inside of our workspace. Oops, not the workspace, sorry. Our labs, intro lab 1 data, and I tell you in the lab just to add the lakes first. So we'll go ahead and do that. And here they come in. Great. They came in blue. That's great. I usually like to stay inside the Select Elements tool right here, but it has the zoom tools, the pan tools, so on and so forth. If it did come in like a different color, like beige or something, it's no problem. You just click on the symbol over here and change it to one of the pre-made styles. Great. So there's our lakes. Let's go ahead and add the rest of the data. So if I hold down my control, I can get my streams, my county, and my county seats without getting the lakes again. I'll say Add, and there they go. They came in. And when they come in stock, sometimes they can have some pretty bad colors, right? It can be pretty awful. So what happens when we unclick these things? You can barely even see these little green dots represent our county seats, but if I check these boxes, they turn off, the streams turn off, and I can even turn off the county polys. But when the county polys are on, I can't see the lakes. Let's change these county polys and make them look at least a little better. And we'll make them beige. There we go. We can't see our lakes. Why? Well, because we have a polygon over the top of the lakes, and that's the counties. So you need to grab lake and drag it up above, and now you can see them. So there's multiple ways of looking at things in the table of contents. Right now, we're in the list by drawing order. If you were to list by source, this is where the data is located inside of our raw data folder. But this doesn't allow you to move the layers. So if you're ever in this list by source, then you won't be able to move your layers. If you go back over to draw order, you can move things around, right? And the lakes disappear again, bring them up. Let's turn the streams back on. Let's make them look like a stream. So you can just choose river here, and it's blue, and its width is 1 point. And there we go. And then turn our county seats back on, and maybe let's go with something that shows up better, like a little red dot. You can increase its size up to 6 or 7. Let's see. All right, there you go. So there's all the county seats in the state of Montana. Now, after you've started to work in ArcMap a little bit, it's a good idea to save. You never want to leave your document as untitled for a long time, because if it crashes or something, you might lose all of your work. So save early, save often. We'll go under File, Save. You don't need to do a Save As every time. That's only if you want to create a new version. The first time, you'll just be able to hit Save. All right, and then you got to navigate to where it's located. So under Documents, Intro GIS, Labs, Lab 1, and it's an untitled MXD. And I'm going to recommend you use your last name, McManigal, _ Lab 1. Remember, never allow any spaces in paths for GIS. If you have to have spaces, then you replace it with an underscore. It'll really mess up the location of the data, okay? And it'll automatically tack on the .mxd, and that's an ArcMap document. And save, and now it's been changed to McManigal Lab 1, and it's saved in my folder. If I were to close this out, I could go back to my folder, double click, and reopen my map. Okay? So one thing you need to realize though is all this data is not actually saved in the map. It's what the ArcMap software is actually doing is saving the path back to the data in the folder. That's why it's really important that we keep these paths clear. If you move that folder somewhere else on your computer and try to open the document, it's probably going to have a hard time. Okay? One way we can help it is if we go up here to File and then under Map Document Properties, and if we check this little checkbox here, Path Names, Store Relative Path Names. That means that if the MXD is in the same folder with the data, it most likely will find it again, okay? Not always, and I'll show you later in the semester if you have broken paths, how to fix it. Also, it helps if we set a default geodatabase that is not just the standard one auto-created, but the one that we're creating for our project. A word about apply and OK. Apply is kind of like preview, so you can hit that if you want to see if it worked or not, or if you're really confident it's going to work, you can just hit OK. All right, so I can save it again. Once you've saved it once, you just have to hit this little save icon, which is a floppy disk that many of you may have never seen in real life, or you can just hit Control-S to save it with a hotkey. All right. So ArcMap has a lot of the same stuff that you saw over in ArcCatalog, right? So we can zoom in with a zoom tool here. I can zoom into like Flathead Lake. I can hit the full extent tool and go back out. I can zoom in to Missoula here in the center. And I can hit my little pan tool, move around, go look at Ravalli County, Granite County, so on and so forth. I don't like to stay in the pan tool because if you click somewhere, it just bounces around. So I would get to your full extent, and then usually I leave things in the Select Elements tool. All right. So you can also work with scale here. So underneath this drop down, there's preset scales. So there's 1 to 250,000. You can zoom out to 1 to 750 for the whole state. Maybe we got to go out to 1 to, let's see, 1 to 3 million. Yep, there we go. You can also just go to full extent again, but then that isn't an even scale. So you can also type in a scale. I'm just going to put 500,000 and hit enter. You don't have to put the 1, colon, or the commas. It'll automatically add those. So there's our map at 1 to 500,000, right? We're going to go into scale deeply, but imagine you had 2 of these dots here, these 2 points on the map, and they were weather stations. And we were at 1 to 500,000, and you measured them on the map, and they were 2 inches apart. So how many inches would that equal in the real world? Well, it's just a ratio. So it's 500,000 of whatever you measure on the map in the real world. So it would be 2 times 500,000. They'd be 1,000,000 inches apart. Wow, 1,000,000 inches, that doesn't mean much to me. How many miles is that? Well, how would you figure it out? Well, you'd have to Google that stuff, right? Or use a converter of some kind. So it's pretty easy to figure out in our day and age when we have the internet, right? So the question in the actual lab asks, you go down to 1 to 25,000, and now the weather stations are 2.4 inches apart. It's pretty easy for you guys to do the math and answer the questions. All right. So let's pan over, and I'm not using the pan tool by grabbing it. I'm just pushing down on the scroll wheel, and that is actually a nice way to pan around. All right, it's a big state. We're going to go all the way over to the northeast corner, right? And then we're going to grab the Identify tool here, and I'm going to click on this county. Well, what's the name of this county? That's Sheridan County up there in the north, okay? The northeast. And how many, how big is it? So it's 1,705.74 square miles, or this many acres. And here you can actually right-click on these and copy them and paste them right into your Word document for the answers. If you weren't sure, you could always recalculate it, but we'll get into that later on in the semester. Always include your units. Whenever you're showing like a unit of measure, make sure that in your report you don't just write 1,705 and some change. I need to know, what is that? Square miles, square inches, you know, parsecs, what are you working with, right? Cool. All right, and then they ask you to identify this point. So what is the county seat for Sheridan County? Well, it's Plentywood, right? So it's pretty easy to use the software for these things. Okay. So now we're going to close this out and go back to my standard tool, and I'm going to use the find tool. So click on that. There you go. So here's the little find box, and we're going to type in wheatland in here. Wheatland, which is pretty much all of eastern Montana. And if we hit find, it'll bring it up in the search, but it doesn't do anything to the map. So if we double click on wheatland, it'll zoom to wheatland. There it goes. Right? And you can right click on it and you have other options. So it flashes if you click flash. There you go. So you just need to tell me what happens with when you do that inside the lab. And now we're going to look for Polson. So we're going to go Polson and find, and then double click, and there's Polson. So Polson is a city. It's actually a county seat that's right on Flathead Lake. If I right click on it and say zoom to, it'll zoom in close, and then I can use my scroll wheel and zoom in even closer. And you see it's kind of strange. What's going on with Polson there? What's up with its location? Well, there's obviously some kind of a mistake. So either its location is slightly off in its geodatabase or in its location database, or the shorelines of the river or Flathead Lake are a little bit off, right? So just ask you what's going on with that. Okay, so now we can close this out, and I'm going to go to full size again, and let's clean it up and make a map out of it. Okay, let's see. First thing I want to do, I don't mind the county seats like that, but maybe I want to label them. What if I right clicked on this and just said label features? All right, so now we have a name on every one of these guys. Cool. I don't really like that the counties are all the same color. Streams being blue, that's fine. Lakes being blue. Let's double click on the county poly, and it'll bring up this layer properties. And the symbology tab right here, there's multiple options. Right now we have a single symbol, all the same color. But if we go to categories, and then under this value field we choose name, and then we're going to uncheck all other and say add all values. So now it gave me a new color for every one of the counties in Montana. If I click apply, you'll get a preview of it. Hey, that's not bad. And then okay, and there we go. So it also added them all over here in the table of contents, and if you don't want it to have that big list, you just have to, reduce it by hitting the little minus symbol there. So there's not a bad map of Montana. So what we want to do now is lay it out so we can include it in our report. So you can go under the view and you can do layout view, or there's also down here a little button for layout view. I'm going to click on that. The default is an 8.5 by 11 inch page, and that's not great because Montana is better served by a landscape. So we're just going to go under File, and then Page and Print Setup, and we're just going to check the box that says Landscape right there. That's all you need to do. Don't need to mess with anything else. Say OK, great. And so now we have a landscape, but our data frame here, which is basically the layers, is still boxed in a portrait. So I'm going to set some guides up here on my rulers. I'm going to go to 1 inch there. I'm going to go to 1 inch from the edge, which is 10 that way, 7.5 this way, and 1 inch down here. And now I can take my data frame and just snap it in. I'll zoom out a little bit with my scroll wheel. Snap this guy in. Cool. And then I can right click, or not even right click, but just go ahead and hit full extent. There we go. And then the tools that popped up here, these are the layout tools. And one of the most valuable ones is zoom to whole page. So there we go. So now I want to add a few things to my map. So I'm going to go under Insert, Title, Montana. And I just held down my shift so I got all caps. And it'll place the word Montana, and I'll just pull it down right there. Cool. I want to insert a scale bar. There we go. And I'm just going to choose a regular old plain scale bar. Say OK. And add it right there. Cool. And if it's in meters or something, you just have to right click on it, go to its properties, and you can change its division right here. So it's in miles, and that's pretty good for Americans. We like that. But I don't like this 240. Nobody measures in 240s. So I'll just grab it and drag it over until I get a nice, clean, rounded measurement of 200 miles. That'd be great. You could go down to 100. That's fine. What else does a map need? How about an insert north arrow? And I like a nice, clean north arrow, not too spicy. But you can choose from all those. We'll talk a lot about north arrows. And then the only other thing you need for today's map is just your name. You always want to take credit for your work. So insert, text, and it shows up right in the middle here. And I'm just going to write my name, Kev the Mick, You guys can be more professional. I like to be a clown, but that's what they pay me for. And then I'll just tuck this down here, and I'll move my north arrow maybe to the center of the map. How about something like that? All right, so that's a pretty decent map for your first try, right? All right, so we want to save. So we'll hit the little save icon. And now we want to export it to something that we can put into our report. So we'll go to File, Export Map, and this will pop up. You want to make sure it's going to the right place, so it is going to my Intro GIS Lab 1. You want to choose JPEG from the drop down here. You don't want a PDF or an AI document. There's a number of different rasters, but a JPEG is a good one. And it might come in as like 96 DPI, that's dots per inch, but we want ours a little higher so we get a nice map. We're going to go 150. There we go. And we don't need to check any other boxes or anything, and you just say save. And it'll run, and when it's done, it'll tell you export is complete. So let me head on over to the folder and see if it's in there. There it is. There's our Lab 1 JPEG. I'm going to double click and bring it up. And there we go. So there's our map of Montana with 1-inch margins all the way around, a scale bar, a north arrow, and our name on it. Okay, that's all I have for you today. That's Lab 1. It's really basic. You're going to answer the questions to the lab in the report template provided. You're going to go ahead and import this map into your report and then turn it into the Dropbox on Moodle. Thanks for your time. If you like this and it was helpful, please give the video a like and subscribe to the channel. Have a good one.